college levels. If you need some homework help or tutoring, check out the links in the description below. And with that, let's begin with these set of questions. So with that, let's hop right to it. So hopefully you can see my screen. Just double check that. Okay, well, let's begin. And now the first question, we're talking about classifying each compound as ionic, molecular, and they're giving us 4 of them, okay? So is it ionic or molecular? And we're given CO2, that's carbon dioxide, NiCl, that's nickel chloride, NaI, that's sodium iodide, and PCl3, not PC13, PCl3, and that's phosphorus trichloride. So with that, let's break down what does it mean to be ionic and what does it mean to be molecular. So ionic molecules, they are when two elements, a metallic element and a non-metallic element, are bonded together. When those two bond, those form an ionic bond. So metal bonded with non-metal, and this bond right here is ionic bond. And now with a molecular compound, it's when it's a non-metal and non-metal bonded together, and that right there is a covalent bond. Okay, so that's how it breaks down, and now I want you to classify them. So we're going to use this space down here, just going to highlight it so we know where we're going to write it as where we're going to put the classification. Okay, so with that, let's break it down. Easiest way to go about these type of questions is just refer to your periodic table, which you are free to use. Some classes just want you to memorize the basic ones, but for ease and for familiarity, we're going to be using the periodic table just to be able to get these few ones in, okay? So let's start with CO2, carbon dioxide. So carbon molecule is listed as a non-metal, so we're going to label, so let's make it, non-metals will be green, so that's non-metal, and metals will be red. So with that logic, C, non-metal, circle it in green. Oxygen, also non-metal, green. So 2 greens, 2 non-metals. So with that, this is a covalent bond. Okay, now let's move on. Nickel is a transition metal, which still counts as a metal. So with that, circle it in red, metal. Chlorine, you see here, it's a halogen, another non-metal. Okay, so now we have a metal and non-metal. So with that, this is an ionic compound. Okay, sodium iodide. Sodium is an alkali metal, again metal. Iodine is a non-metal. As you can see, it's another halogen. So with that, this is going to be an ionic bond because it's a metal and a non-metal. And now for the last one, phosphorus trichloride. Now with this, phosphorus still considered a non-metal, so let's circle that in green. And chlorine, still non-metal, even based on what we did from the previous part. So with that, this is also a covalent bond. Oops, let me just write that better. Covalent. Now with that, we have covalent, ionic, ionic, covalent. Now this is just for extra information, but as you notice when I was calling out their names, you notice that these two, this is nickel chloride and sodium iodide, but these covalent ones, they're called carbon dioxide and phosphorus trichloride. You'll see when it comes to covalent bonds, they usually like to reflect whether there's multiple of them in their name. Because for example, I could also say, let's say calcium iodide, since calcium prefers 2 of them, it would be CaI2, and it'll still be called calcium iodide and not calcium diiodide, for example. And this would also be an ionic. It's just something to know for future reference if they start giving you the names instead of the formula and tell you to classify it still. So with that, let's check if they have it correct here. So the answer, A is molecular. Yep, so that's covalent, molecular. And these two, ionic, ionic. And the last one is covalent compound. So there we go. So just to clarify, these are molecular. I just named the bonds in them. But once you have a covalent bond, it makes it a molecular compound. Okay? So that is correct here. And just reading through it, it explains that carbon is non-metal, which is what I said. Nickel is a metal. And also sodium is also a metal. And the rest of these, as you can see, are non-metals. And depending on which is bonded with, it makes an ionic or molecular compound. Okay, so with that, we got our first question correct. And let's move on to the next one.